Hello. Oh, I gotta do the thing. The trick is I also have to get rid of this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like having those
Yeah,
on.
you just have to throw it.
Oh, that could be part of it. We're calling this out as a bit already.
Yeah.
But I'm completely okay with that. Um, welcome everybody. This is the season 2 opener of Good Humans. We've gone through like a billion different variations on this name, but Good Humans Artisan Interviews.
Yes.
Or just Our Good Humans.
Yes.
Podcasting is difficult. I said this at the last one.
Mm-hmm.
I've now officially published our first show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, everywhere. Pretty much everywhere, because Apple then sends it. It's a lot of work to get these things out. I have a lot more respect for people who have done this before now, and yeah, we're here.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
One of these days we're gonna have to have an actual like overhead camera showing like we should do a time lapse for setup next time.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
And we'll intentionally throw a variable in there that makes it not a good setup.
Yeah, like we'll bring both of our babies and like
Yes.
our dogs and just have like,
Oh my god.
I don't know, some awesome like babies and dogs behind the scenes.
And then
while
we'll
we're trying to
do
set
it in
cameras.
a field.
Oh, that's even better.
We'll do it in a field so that everybody and you have to do it left-handed.
Okay, that sounds like that would
Horrible.
never air.
Or ironically it would blow up the best. It would be
Yes.
like
For sure.
the first podcast to get 400 trillion views.
Yes.
I
Okay.
don't-
We got this.
We got this. Welcome, Sarah Schade.
Hi.
I know you're always here, but we're gonna pretend like you're not. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to this show. This is my basement. Welcome
Yes.
to our beautiful set. For those that don't know Sarah, Sarah is Sarah Schade Photography. But actually, why don't you introduce yourself as opposed to me just constantly talking?
Sure. I can introduce myself. So I'm Sarah of Sarah Schade Photography, but I also work with Brooke and Michael at Allen Kent Photography. This is Michael, half of Allen Kent. And so I have been kind of a part of Michael's journey setting up this podcast as well as Photo Club. But a little bit more about my work as a photographer. I'm based in Traverse City, which is, if you're not from Michigan, in northern Michigan. And I do...
It's way up here.
Yep. The hand. We're about right here. That you're from Michigan when you pull out the hand. But I focus on portraits, weddings, elopements, families, kind of everything in between, dogs. So that's just a little bit about me. I love working outside, and mostly photographing like near water, in the dunes, really anywhere that there's a fun adventure.
Sarah's work is very similar to ours, but I feel like you have this like, I don't know if it's like an earthier edge to it, or like, I know when you're not shooting for us or not editing for us, your work takes on like a little bit of a darker tone. Maybe a little cooler, a little bit more
I think
natural.
My greens and colors are really like cool in temperature. But then I love like warm skin tones, and I love like kind of moody, shadowy, like, I don't know, just kind of emotional mood in my photography, which I don't really know how that developed. I think it just naturally was there, and then I was kind of gravitated towards like other photographers that kind of had the same look.
Which fortunately for both of us, that the style that is, I guess, I don't like the word trendy, but the style that is currently like en vogue is just something that we both gravitate towards. And that's part of why we latched onto you so early. And we shot Sarah's wedding in, I don't know yours.
2017.
2017. Yeah. And so we've known your family for a while. But we were drawn to your aesthetic immediately. And so when we knew that we needed another photographer based completely on COVID, I was going to say mistakes. They weren't mistakes. The couple didn't even make a mistake. It was nobody's fault. Some things just fell through, and so we needed to kind of make some changes, make some moves. We brought you on, but what a fortuitous event that COVID forced us as a team to kind of like become a team, and B, that the aesthetic that feels, I don't know about you, but like that really feels natural to me, that I can just go out in the field and shoot the thing that I love doing, is currently the thing on trend. And maybe that's arrogant, or maybe that's like overly optimistic to say that that thing that I'm not
Mhm.
influenced by trends or styles, but I don't know. Can
Mhm.
you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I kind of struggle with trying to be more on trend, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm definitely, as a newer photographer, I would say, like I think safe, and I really like tried and true poses. Like, okay, I've tried this before, I've tried this location before. Like, I'm just gonna feel more confident in myself, like doing something like that. So, a goal for this year is to actually like follow more things on Instagram and try to be a little bit more on trend. Because while like my editing style might be on trend, I feel like I could do just a lot more and be a lot more adventurous. Where I feel like you and Brooke, like your work in the last like 2 years, I feel like has completely been like just way more adventurous and way more like, I don't know, there's just a lot more fun. I know that's kind of a
Interesting.
weird word, but like,
No, it's. I don't think that's weird. I think fun really plays into it.
mm-hmm.
I think the reason that the stuff that we get recognized for does well is because we just have a good time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So sorry. Continue.
Um, where was I? Oh, so yeah, one of my goals this year, I know that sounds kind of weird to be more trendy, but I would say just being more adventurous is
Yeah.
kind of like what I want to focus on because, like I was saying, I feel like I get stuck in I know this location and I know this works.
For
So
sure.
I'm just going to lean on that.
I will say this though, there is something about that's a huge benefit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I was writing about this chat last night, and one of the things that I ended up writing was like how interesting it is that you're fairly new as a working photographer. You've been
Mm-hmm.
shooting for a long time. Your street stuff, especially the stuff that I saw through Italy, is beautiful. You have the eye for it, but the business side of things is new to you.
Yes.
But where was I? Oh, there is something really nice about, let me rephrase that. This is the part where we cut it out when it's not live streaming. The fact that you're fairly new to the business side of this industry
Mm-hmm.
means that you may feel this pull towards my work needs to be better, my work needs to be newer, differenter, or more experimental or more fun,
Mm-hmm.
and that's true for all of us. But at the same time, having those things that just work
Mm-hmm.
in your toolkit when you're not feeling it, when the day sucks
Mm-hmm.
and it's rainy and it's grungy out and you only have 15 minutes and you're like, this has got to work. You know that location you've been to, you know it's going to work. You know that pose that you can just pull out of your back pocket you've tried 40,000 times. And this one, it's going to be a good photo. It's going to be pretty and they're going to be happy with it. It might not be your most experimental, but it'll get you there.
Yeah.
I think that balanced with that need for constant growth and constant creation is something that I don't know. I feel like I've talked about this a lot, but I have never really seen. I shouldn't say never. I feel like I don't see often the discussion on what to do when you're just like not feeling it. When you're just feeling like burnt out and spent, and maybe that's just part of me processing the last season, which was very hectic and very chaotic, and very like almost like combative, trying to deal with COVID reschedules and weddings not going through. But yeah, I don't know. I like the understanding that this is like a push and pull. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I think so. Like, use what you're comfortable with. Like, I probably wouldn't bring a camera that I had never shot with on a shoot because
Right.
I would feel so intimidated and so like scared that I wouldn't get anything. But use what you're comfortable with, and then throw in maybe a few things that you've been wanting to do, or
Totally.
something that I don't know you're maybe not so comfortable with, but you want to be.
Yeah, I have. We both bought new Sigma lenses at the end of 2020, and I bought a 35 and a 50, and they're both replications of what we already have. I have my standard kit is 2 Canon full frames, a 35 and a 50 on either side, and I just wanted more. I just wanted backups or enough that 2 people could be out shooting with the same exact kit. And I still haven't shot with that. The 50. It's right there.
Okay.
I mean, it's on that camera. I haven't used that 35 yet because I don't trust it yet. Right?
Yeah.
Like I did some testing on the 50 and it's tack sharp, but I shot with that 35 and halfway through the shoot I was like, I went back to the old 35 because it
Mm-hmm.
was tried and true. I knew that it was going to work for me,
Mhm.
right? And so I think that that works. That's true for gear, but it's also true for style. It's true
Mhm.
for locations. It's true for poses or prompts or whatever that
Mhm.
is in your toolkit. There's something to be said about balancing between like, I've done this before, this will clearly work, and
Mhm.
you know what? Let's try something
Yeah.
weird, you guys. You want to do something like, you want to jump off
Yeah.
that tall thing? Don't break an ankle, but you want to jump off. The number of
Mhm.
times I've ended a shoot with,
Let's keep it in. Let's just make it interesting.
yeah, can we
Yeah.
do something weird for me?
Yeah. I don't know if this will turn out, but that's, I think we've talked about this before, but you've told me to literally like give yourself permission by saying like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work. I just want to try it. This could be really cool, or you might not see these photos,
Yeah.
and then just like try it, like movement and kind of that like, blur, for the lack of a better word,
Mhm.
style is like, again, on trend right now.
Yeah.
And so
Thankfully.
yes, but doing something like that, like, okay, I got, all of the traditional like engagement photos,
Yeah.
Now let's just like run around and I'm just going to get a bunch of movement photos.
For sure.
Like, yeah, I don't know, this might not work. You might not see them, or you might get 20 of them because I love them so much.
Exactly.
Like,
This might
yeah.
be half the set.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
think it's like giving yourself room to play is important.
Totally.
Yeah.
Real quick, programming note. That's a fun podcast word. Can you bring the mic a little bit closer to you?
Oh, yeah.
Is it going to go any further?
Is that good?
Can you pull it down, the whole thing down, and then it'll come out further?
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm new to the podcast world.
We all are. I
Cool.
sound like I know what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
I didn't know what
Right.
what mic to use like less than a month ago.
You look like you know what you're doing. I'm
That's
like
the nicest compliment I've ever heard.
I'm like one of those people that doesn't like being the center of attention, and literally like a microphone reminds me of like spelling bees. Not that I ever did one.
Whoa, that's a very
I don't know
specific
why.
like memory.
I
Not
know.
even memory, just like
Or choir. There you
Oh.
go. Yeah.
Don't do that.
No, don't ask me to sing.
That reminds me, we need to schedule another live stream or like a, we're going through this together. We're building this podcast, this process, and one of the things is laying out the different programs that we're running. So the Good Humans program is this interview series that we're doing here. I'm really excited to get back into the roundtable discussions though, and one of them, to that point of like not wanting to be the center of attention, we have a request that I promise we're getting to, this like introvert versus extrovert discussion, which I keep saying like we need to get to that. Once we get the whole schedule lined up, which I think will be this week, we can start to dial in. I think it might be healthy to jump right into a roundtable discussion because, man, they were fun. We did I think we did 4 of them over the lockdown, and they were really, really popular.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Cool. Where were we? We were talking about experimental versus
versus kind of playing.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to ask this question of you
go ahead.
from our notes. So we know a little bit about like what you shoot. We know a little bit about the style that you bring to the table. Can you talk a little bit about, because you are specifically new to the industry side of this, what would be your dream shoot? Like if not individual shoot, but let's say it's 5 years from now, you've got like a lot of years under your belt, you've got like brand recognition, people know who you are and what you do. What are you shedding from your like workload, and what are you like really focusing on if you have complete control?
Yeah, so I've thought a lot about this actually, and I kind of see 2 different routes in my photography career. So the one that I'm focusing on right now is I really want to shoot elopements and I really want to continue to travel.
Yeah.
I didn't go anywhere in 2020. We had a trip to Iceland planned and had to cancel. But partly because of COVID and then being pregnant, we didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I have really missed traveling, and I would absolutely love to just like lay out a schedule. Like I'm going to be in this country during this month, and that's where you can come and elope and, maybe do like a package deal or something.
Yeah.
So I would love to focus on travel and really just telling love stories. I know that sounds sappy, but I absolutely love the idea of doing just engagements and elopements.
I only think it feels sappy because our culture doesn't like us authentically speaking about things that we're passionate about sometimes. I feel really strongly about this, and I feel really strong. Like as I've been writing about the podcasting process, I keep coming back to this term like emotional photography education, because there's a million places out there that will talk to you about like aperture and shutter speed, and you should go get Peak Design anchors. You should. Peak Design's great, especially after what Amazon did to them. But I love that we frequently excuse me. We'll cut that part out. I love that we frequently focus on the emotional side of the photography education world, that we're speaking more to what makes people tick as a photographer, not necessarily even as a couple, not as a subject, but it's interesting that you would check yourself and say, it's sappy to say I love stories. Why? That's so human, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not calling you out specifically. It's a cultural problem, right? Like,
yeah, it totally is.
I'm not calling you out to say like, what, you don't love stories, but I have that too. I mean, the number of times I've chuckled at like, oh, I love. Like I feel like that's a common like criticism of like photography bios. But what if it's true?
I know. I totally agree. And as like, I don't know, someone that I feel like I didn't always grow up wanting to be a photographer. I didn't always like think that I would be a photographer. I think something that got me into it was actually like looking at my grandparents' like wedding photos that were all on film, because they're gorgeous. And just kind of that like wedding aesthetic and that kind of like nostalgic feel is kind of something that I've always been gravitated towards in photography. And so I don't know, I think that's kind of why I started, because I, look at like your grandparents' photos or go online and look at like the photos from like Time magazine, and there's something just about like a love aesthetic that I don't know, I just really got passionate about.
That's interesting.
And so that kind of makes me just want to, I don't know, tell other people's love stories.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder, have you photographed wedding on film yet? Have you photographed a wedding on film yet?
Not fully, no.
Gotcha. But but you've brought film cameras with. How was that for you?
I like it. I think a lot of my film cameras are old, and I laugh because I'm like the person that does like has a light meter app and like checks it and everything. And so I think it would be more productive if I actually brought a camera where I could just meter it directly on there. And I'm just someone that doesn't like a lot of technology or a lot of steps. And so I like just being able to, trust that my machines work for me. And so yeah, I think I'm like simple is best. So, but I've loved shooting film. I don't really do as much now as I did in school because I don't have a darkroom.
Or access. You had like cheap film, right? Or like free film?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, tuition, but yeah.
Let's not talk about
exactly. Yeah. So but I would love to like have a darkroom again, and because printing was really what I loved.
Oh, I miss that.
Yeah.
I I have all of these film cameras. You're welcome to borrow them.
Thank you.
We're gonna make eventually we're gonna have, when photo walks are opened up again, we're gonna have a film photo walk, and I have a bin, like a mail tote that is intentionally just called the borrow bin. The whole point is that I'd love to open up a place that people can send donated cameras. We can clean them up, put them like through a test roll, make sure that they're functioning, and that have members have a place that they can like borrow something, play with something, shoot a roll through something to see if they do like that film experience, because it's different.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you should feel bad about not wanting to rely on a light meter. I mean, some older cameras need that, but the Mamiya 645 that I have has a prism built in. Okay. It's a big, chunky, medium format camera, but you should borrow that and you should shoot it on a wet. It's heavy.
Okay.
Like it probably weighs as much as Clementine does.
Yeah.
But maybe more.
Yeah. Clementine's my baby. She's 14 pounds.
I don't know. It might weigh more. It's heavy.
I've had so in school I did experiment with a large format camera. Those are heavy. And like tripod and large format.
For sure.
Yeah.
This will be a really interesting segue. Why don't we talk about art school?
Yeah.
Both of us have What is your specific degree?
So I have a ASA, which is Associate in Science and Arts.
Okay.
But I specialized in fine art, and then I have a BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Okay.
And I specialized in art, design, and architecture.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So we both have a BFA.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is in technically it's in two-dimensional fine arts with a concentration in photography.
Okay.
It's a photography degree,
Yep.
whatever. Mine specifically allowed me to kind of experiment because it's not a photography degree. It allowed me to dabble, but I took up to like photo 701, I think was my my capstone photography class. I took a lot of photo, a lot of darkroom, a lot of digital, a lot of digital imaging and whatnot. Let's just open it up. Like, do you think it was worthwhile to go to art school?
So I it was a non-traditional student. I went to the community college in Traverse City. Didn't really know what I was going to do. I didn't think I was going to be a photographer. And so that kind of opened up some opportunities and just kind of like made me curious about different mediums. So I was the person that was told by society, I suppose, that, you know, it's really hard to like make money as an artist. And unfortunately, I kind of got stuck in a lot of jobs that I didn't want to do. Like I worked at a call center, and because, you know, it's hard to get a job without a bachelor's degree these days. And so I worked in a call center. I worked as a receptionist, and, you know, while they had health insurance and paid the bills, I knew that I didn't want to do that forever.
Right.
So it was
this after you were married or before you were married?
During, kind of both. So actually after we got married, that was in 2017. In 2018, I just decided to go for it and say I need a reset. I'm applied to U of M Art School, and I got in, and I got a scholarship, and so that's
the University of Michigan, for
yes.
those who are not in the state.
Thank you. Go Blue. So we decided to kind of reset, and I decided to go to art school and finish my degree, which I always was a geek. Like, I loved school. I love to read. I love to learn. Like, I know not everybody loves school, but so for me, I wanted to go to college. Like, that was something that I thought I had missed out on, and I really wanted to do it. And this was like, you know, when I was 24. So that doesn't sound old, but when you're in class with 18-year-olds, 24 is old.
You're like there's a different mindset.
It is. Yeah. Like, it's old. And I learned that very quickly. But yeah, so I think in my mind, like, I always wanted to go to college. So in that sense, it was worth it. My program was very open, where like I couldn't get a photography degree, which I kind of liked because I originally wanted to be a designer, like graphic designer. And so I could kind of take whatever classes I wanted to. But U of M, if you hear this, you only have 3 photography classes.
Whoa.
And I blew through them in my first semester.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wait, it wasn't like 101, 201, 301?
No. Well, so they have a 101, but that transferred from the community college.
Okay.
So I didn't take that one. So I took documentary photography.
Okay.
Which I absolutely fell in love with.
Yeah.
That kind of opened me up to doing like street photography and being just really natural, like with couples now, like just prompting people to be themselves. And then they have documentary photography 2. So I took that one as well. They have those too. Yeah.
So it's a 101 and then another 101 and then a 201. That's it?
Yep. That is it.
Wow.
And so I blew through photography so fast.
Do they have the facilities for it and everything?
No, they don't have a studio. Like, I could check out stuff, but unfortunately their photography was kind of looked at as like, you know, I don't want to insult a program or anything because I'm really thankful for that opportunity, but in like the art world, I feel like you're looked at as you're 100%. Just pushing a button.
Yep.
And that anyone can do it.
Yep.
So like I took a like senior thesis class, and I was the only one doing a photography project. And like,
interesting.
My professor was like, "Is there a way that you can show me that you're doing a lot of work?" And I was like, yeah, what do you mean? And she was like, "Well, you're showing me these images." And I was like, "Oh, I can make contact sheets." And I came in the next day with like contact sheets that showed that I took like 1,000 photos per session. Because, you know, when you're out shooting, you do take a lot of photos.
Was this digital or film?
Digital.
Okay.
And so I would like make contact sheets in Lightroom. and then just bring them in and then like kind of go through like, oh, I'm, basically calling these, but I would do it on paper so she could see it.
Yeah.
And then like show the final product. And then she kind of understood like how much work I was putting into things. But so in that sense, it was kind of weird because I went into this program not knowing that I would be a photographer. And then I kind of fell in love with photography while I was there, but ran out of classes to take. But then a long story, but I ended up going to study in Italy. And so I worked in a darkroom in Italy, and that was amazing. And so I would say art school was worth it for me because I got to live in Italy for summer.
So the one anecdote you gave that you told me already about the time in Italy, can you explain? Do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you explain the difference in the darkroom in the States and in Italy?
Yep. So if you've worked in a darkroom in the U.S., which I did actually, then U of M's outside of their art school, they do have a darkroom. So I did end up working in there for a couple months before COVID. So, in the US, they just tell you to dump all of the developer and all the chemicals down the drain, at least like they did at my school.
Same.
And okay, so it wasn't just U of M, CMU does it too.
I did CMU, NMC, Northwestern Michigan College, the one in Traverse City, and then my high school also.
Okay.
So it's a pervasive problem.
Okay. So like, dump developer and whatever else.
Stop, fix, all these heavy metals.
Yes.
Yeah, bad stuff.
Everything down the drain. In Italy, we actually had a recycling program where we would actually like put the, stop and fix and everything in these bins. And then our professor would take them and they would get recycled. So he literally had a machine that could recycle. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was developer, but something. And then it would be, like when you get your oil changed, hopefully they properly dispose of the oil.
Right.
But anyway, so other countries are set up to be more environmentally safe, which was...
Hopefully.
Yes, hopefully.
That's so wild. Like,
yeah.
I never, until you told me that was like a week ago or something, I had never thought about how just you agitate and tap, and then you just dump it right down the drain. And that
it probably ends up in the Great Lakes. So
and it's a caustic smelling chemical. I do know that Stop Bath, the reason it smells so interesting, the reason that dark rooms smell so like nostalgic, it's vanilla.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Fun fact.
Yeah, that is a fun fact.
So my experience with art school was, the way I've described this in the past, it's not really similar. It's not really different. The way I've described my experience with art school was Central Michigan specifically has a good program, a good arts program. I thoroughly enjoyed my time through there. I got to experiment with printmaking and a little bit of design and sculpture and metalworking and casting bronze and stuff like that. And then my favorite class that I took was my senior year or my junior year. It was a performance and installation class, and man, I got to make some like weird, wild stuff. I would always find a way to like incorporate camera work into it if I could. I loved it. I had a great time. I didn't learn much about photography. I mean, I learned how to all the darkroom stuff. I took 3 years of darkroom, or 3 semesters of darkroom, so I have good like background in that. And then there was like some studio classes, and those were good as well. But the thing that I learned the most, and the reason that I can't complete without this fact, I might tell people don't bother, right? The reason that I still say my time in art school was great is because I learned how to think critically. I learned how to break down problems. I learned to think like an artist as opposed to just a photographer. It's a terrible thing.
That's so important, though.
It is important.
Yeah.
It's really important. And to your point, you're right. The art world thinks of photography as at least 55 notches below a painter. If you want to be an artist with a capital A, you will paint or you will sculpt or be even printmaking, I feel like is considered less like, you want to be an oil painter, you are an artist. Anything below that, you're losing points. Photography is like the bottom. I'm sure there are new things. I'm sure like 3D rendering is considered even worse than us, but it was interesting because the beginning, like the 101 level classes, it was tons of photographers. But once I was in my like senior year, and so my program specifically was like a 5-year course, so I was in like my super senior year at CMU. There was like 2 of us left. Everybody
Wow.
else was painters and sculptors and potters, but none of us, like all the photographers had left. So I don't know if it's just, it's easier to jump into photography, but harder to stick with it, or the industry doesn't really like encourage that. But I loved my time working as an artist, but I definitely learned how to be a photographer the second I left school.
Yeah, I totally agree. To your point of what you learned to think critically, I learned so much about process and so much just about like research, which I know sounds strange.
What do you mean by process?
Process, like how I apply that right now. Like, okay, so I have somebody that, let's say you want family photos. Like, I have creative control over that. It's not saying, okay, cool, you want family photos. Where do you want to go? What time?
Yeah.
Oh, noon in my backyard. Okay. Like, I have, like, I'm in charge. I can say, I can kind of craft the look that I want. And I guess I didn't really learn, or I didn't know that process in photography was necessarily a thing until, like, I was in school and, like, I spent, like, weeks on something that I thought I could do in 2 days. And
the number of times that happened. Well,
yeah.
Let's look at this afternoon, right? Putting this together.
Yeah.
You're like, we can do this in 20 minutes. Let's just we'll meander upstairs and then we'll come on down.
Yeah.
But it took forever. Yeah.
Right.
I know that feeling very well.
Yeah, process and setup is huge, and I think that that's something that people don't realize, and I didn't realize
both clients
that.
and other photographers.
Yeah.
And the ones that are just getting started in the industry, the ones that are learning to be a photographer, to be a creative, and they look at your work and go, "Oh my God, I can't. I don't even know where to start." You take a second, you breathe. You can do it, and you look at all of the parts and pieces. And maybe this is what you mean by process. But for me, the thing that I learned in art school the most was every aspect has to be considered to make a piece successful. So maybe if I can break down my learning at an art school down to one core nugget, it is I learned how to convey a message with every aspect of a story. So that meant that, like, the photograph, the fact that it was a photograph, the fact that what was in the background, what did the dress look like, what did the location, time of day, all of those things had to be important, because you may not see it, your viewer might not even see it, but they are going to internalize that subconsciously. And if you can overthink things for the 40th time, for the 40th shoot, so that it feels smooth and obvious, it's going to be that much more successful. And I think you bring that into that process, into the business world, into photography as a business, and you say, yeah, of course I can go to the dunes on a Saturday evening just before sunset. That sounds great. That's a very good time to shoot. Oh, you want it at noon in your backyard? Well, I have a process, and I would love to run you through that process so that you can get the best out of this shoot. And that's what our clients consistently come back for, is that they don't need to know when to shoot or what they're supposed to wear, because we take care of all of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think process might look different for everyone. But that's something that I learned in school that I didn't really realize, like, just all the behind the scenes work that went into photography.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And it's kind of crazy. Like, I'm sorry, John Robert Williams, I know you're in photo club and I loved your class, but I would like do the homework for his class like the morning of sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be a photographer. I just was interested in it.
Oh, interesting.
And so I would, just thought it was like, oh, I need 3 long exposure photos by noon today. Like, okay, I'm going to get up early and do that. And, only take 3 photos, where now it's like I'll come back and have thousands of photos to go through. And like, I love that. Like, I love that process. I
wish I loved culling more.
Yeah.
I wish I did. I don't.
Yeah.
That's why I pay people like you to do it for me.
I love it. But I think that's something that is so important for new photographers to learn, because I just didn't realize how much work like goes into things.
Yeah.
Like when, I was experimenting in graphic design, somebody would be like, oh, you can do a logo in like 10 minutes, right? And that would drive me crazy. Like those comments, like, oh, if you're on a shoot, like, oh, can you just really quick, like, grab a photo of me and my mom? It'll take 2 seconds. I'm like, well, let's take 10 minutes and do it right, and like move to the spot because the lighting's better.
For sure.
And I think it's learning that and discovering your own process that is like I don't know, was something that really hurt my business or just my skill level starting out.
Interesting. How so?
I think because I didn't like pay attention to light and
Yeah.
things like that. Like, I would be like, "Oh, you want me to take photos of you? What? I'm so flattered. Of course I can come to your backyard at noon."
Right.
And then the lighting would be terrible. And so,
Surprise.
yeah,
Noon lighting isn't flattering for
yeah.
anybody.
So I think it's like I don't know, getting people like to like me more. Like, "Oh, of course I can do that. Like I can do anything." And then
Because it's so flattering to be asked.
yeah, it
right?
really is.
I mean, there was a story in Photo Club this week where somebody was just so flattered to be photographing that they're not charging for it,
Mm-hmm.
and for them to receive a tip after it, to receive
Mm-hmm.
like any amount of money, was just like mind-boggling to this person.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the photos were great. They did a wonderful job, and the story has a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
But to know that even if it's flattering, you can take the time to give them that like positive experience. Listening to your story, I immediately thought, oh, there's an entire process for all of these other art mediums in at the U of M Art School,
Mm-hmm.
but your teachers, your professors didn't realize how much work went into photography.
Yes. So like my photography professor did. And it's interesting because going into school not knowing I wanted to be a photographer, like
Yeah.
I fell in love with it so quickly. But then other mediums like drawing, I used to love drawing and I kind of didn't like it after
Interesting.
school because I didn't love the process of
Hmm.
redrawing things. And like I would go like, "Oh, this is finished. Like I'm so proud of it." And then like get marks on it and stuff and have to redraw it. Like I hated that. So I liked that photo. I don't know, it was a little more fluid, that you could like re-edit if you're doing working digital, or reprint even in
Yeah.
the darkroom. So yeah, it was interesting that but U of M's program specifically is a little interesting that when you get into higher level classes, they don't always have, like, I didn't have my photography professor like teaching my senior thesis. I had an industrial designer teaching my senior thesis.
Which I will say sounds counterintuitive at first, but
Mm-hmm.
it was one of the things that I took out of specifically my program at CMU was I loved interdisciplinary projects. I
Mhm.
loved seeing the work that I had through the lens of a graphic designer, or through I got the best critique from a sculptor, from like a metal worker. She was this like incredible person who would make like, I don't think we need to not swear. I don't phallic imagery
Yeah.
out of like construction. So she would make like a screwdriver that had a phallus for a tip. And
Oh,
it was just like, it was like industrial and strong. You'll love this. She was a vegan,
Nice.
but wore like all leather
Okay.
because she had to, because it would,
Oh,
you
because
would, like,
metal. Yeah.
Yep. And her take was like, I'll stop wearing leather the second everybody else stops eating meat.
Yeah.
The
Right.
morals behind that aside,
Mhm.
just a total cool, like just a,
Yeah.
can we say badass? I don't know.
Yeah, you can say badass.
It's
I
it's
had-
my show. I can say what I want.
Yeah.
Just a badass person, right? Like,
Yeah.
so cool. The best advice I got from her was I did a project called Nice to Know You. And I was obsessed with like short quippy phrases like that.
Okay.
And so it was a project that I carried a camera with me, and every single person that I ran into, I would photograph.
Okay.
The photos didn't have to be good. In fact, I was not a great photographer at the time, so they weren't good. But it was just about like running into people. And the advice that she gave me, this was probably in like a 300 level critique, was, are these portraits going to be interesting if I don't know them? Mind blown.
Interesting.
Because they weren't.
Mhm.
There was nothing of interest other than it was a big fat book of just tons of people. But you flip to any page, it wasn't interesting. And that only came because she didn't have the baggage of the work being my own, but also because she didn't have a specific take on, she didn't have all the baggage of being a photographer herself. Super interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. We had a class called Sophomore Studio. Since I was a non-traditional student, I don't know, was a sophomore or junior when I took it. And it's a semester course. But literally we had like Basically, there's a film about obstructions, which you basically take an idea. So I think mine was like landscape photography at the time. I was photographing like the Great Lakes, like different spots. And then people like write down like ideas and pass it around a table. And by the time it gets back to you, you have to make something different.
Oh,
So
that's
like one
fun.
of them, I had to make like a 3D representation of the Great Lakes. And to me, that was so scary.
Whoa.
Like going from I just want to photograph pretty things to like making a representation of something was just crazy. But then you do get weird critiques like that open up your work, and it kind of makes you see things differently. And I think that you get so invested in your own projects that you're like, why don't you understand this? Wait, it's because I've been working on it for a month and you're seeing it
For
for
sure.
5 minutes. So
I used to get really lost. The work that I was doing towards the end of my art career was so esoteric and snooty. It was all referencing like art theory and like art history that I was obsessed with. But
Yeah.
if you walked into the gallery, you would never recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting great critique from my professors. I was getting great critique from my peers because they all recognized the references I was making.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought them to my girlfriend at the time, who I married, and Brooke would go, "This is so dumb." There's like, she was much nicer than that.
Yeah.
She would, Brooke, if you're watching this, you were very
She's
generous.
upstairs.
She was nice about it. She didn't say this is dumb,
Mm-hmm.
but what I took from it was, I have no knowledge. Like this, it's just a picture of a blank wall. It wasn't, but like, why is this interesting? And this is why I think a lot of art, like, capital A art, gets a bad rap, because laymen can't understand it. And I think for Brooke to come in my life at that moment and be like, this is not interesting, my work immediately shifted. It was my senior year, my thesis year, and I started doing my entire work changed to, how can I get average people to interact with my work? And so I was doing these weird performances. I was doing at the end of the gallery, I literally like constructed a wall out of drywall and 2x4s, and then like put a mail slot in it and baked cookies for people. And I had them like interacting with it that way.
Yeah.
I tricked them to interact with my work by putting a plate of cookies that said, "Please take one," and then write a note, interact with the piece that way.
Yeah.
I was then getting good reviews from all the art world people and Brooke, because she liked that there were cookies.
Right.
I don't mean to make her sound like she doesn't know what she's talking about. She has a good eye for the arts, for aesthetics, but that insight that like it also needs to be interesting to like other people. It doesn't need to be. You can make
Right.
deep esoteric you can make art for just one person, or you can make it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I just thought at the time it was very interesting to kind of open
Yeah.
that up a little broader.
I agree. That's something that I think I learned quickly in art school. That, critiques, like you can really pour your heart into something or not. Maybe you whipped it up in 10 minutes. There was both of those
For sure.
situations, but like I would, do these presentations and just be like, why don't you understand this?
Right.
Like, why? I've been like working on this for a month and that was it.
It's
Like,
because you have been working on it for a month.
yeah.
And you've thought about every angle, and it's hard to get those fresh eyes and look at something completely objective, which I think is a really interesting segue, because the thing that I miss from art school was critique and community. And that's something that I think that part of which we're already doing a really good job with in Photo Club is having this space for people to come and share and grow and evolve together. I've been writing about Photo Club being an experiment in community-based education. And I think that's really beautiful. The other thing that I think we can do better with, I wrote down your Roundtable Art Project. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that we need something that would allow people to bring work to the table and be like, how can I make this better? People are doing that in the Facebook group. Once COVID is done, maybe it is like a monthly meetup or twice a year where we bring work and we hammer it. Like, this is terrible because of this. Again, we'll be nicer.
Yeah.
But here are the reasons in which that like this is unsuccessful. And here are ways that you can make that more successful. Taking that patina of like everything is good enough off. I don't know. Does that resonate with you at all?
It does. The unsuccessful and successful terms are something that, I think is maybe every art school or every program
Yes.
uses.
We did.
Yes, so did we. And so I think I use that at NMC too. Like, because, you have been staring at something for so long where even in photo club, sometimes if someone posts like an edit and they say like, what direction should I go?
Mm-hmm.
It's because they've been looking at it too long and they just need fresh set of eyes.
Yeah.
So I think the community like that you've created is awesome because
Thank you.
mean, people that didn't go to school or like, I don't have that many photographer friends from college that I can like lean on, and so it's awesome having like all of these friends in photo club that I can be like, oh, okay, you're different photographer, but you still understand how photography works. Where I feel like in school that was so frustrating when people didn't understand how much work I was putting into it.
And we all get it, right? Because we've all been in the trenches doing the same thing for so long. I mean, it'd be interesting to collectively see how many years or hours we have as a community in the photography world. I think that that I lost my train of thought. I was going to respond to something you said.
I don't know. We were talking about how awesome community is. So even if you didn't go to art school, photo club didn't exist when I was going to college. So
it didn't exist
now,
when any of us
and
went
it's
to
awesome.
college, except unless you're currently in college. So I'm gonna do this as a marker for. We're gonna cut that part out where I just lost my train of thought, or leave it in. Maybe we'll just leave it in. I don't know. There was something that I wanted to. Though I lost my train of thought during a segue. I don't remember what it was.
Do we want to pivot actually to like talking about starting a business, or did we talk about that?
We kind of talked about it a little bit, but I think we could definitely go deeper into that. So why don't we'll do this again? This will be my little marker on my mic. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what it has been like kind of leaving the art school world and jumping from there directly into kind of like starting a business? I mean, you can, I would say maybe ignore a little bit of the, for lack of a better word, being like scooped up by us, because that's not going to be everybody's experience. Like being, brought on to like a broader, or like a bigger photography team. But you had a year, 2 years of going completely solo, or how fresh were you when we brought you on?
I guess that timeline's a little messy.
Timeline never works for me either. I can never figure out how long we've been in business.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really know that I wanted to be a photographer until I took those documentary classes. So I had shot a few weddings before I even went to school. And it was literally because, I had a decent camera, not the full frame I have now,
right? But
a decent camera. And it was always like, I think the first wedding I photographed was for a friend that got married like right out of high school. And it was like, oh, you have a camera. You're a nerd. Can you do this?
Yep.
And I was like, oh, sure, I'd love to. Had no idea what I was doing.
Brooke's aunt. Hey, Brooke, you have a camera.
Yeah.
You could take okay pictures. Would you want to do this?
And
can I ask how much you got paid for your first wedding, or did you?
$300.
Ooh, $400.
Okay, perfect.
So a little ritzier over here.
Yes, obviously.
It was a lot of hours though.
It was. I had the worst sunburn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. I don't remember the date, but it was during Cherry Fest, so I know it was July, and it was like in the 90s.
Yeah. And
you can see on screen, I'm very, very freckle faced and pale. So me and sun don't mix. Yes. So yeah, I had actually photographed that wedding, and then there was a couple more similar situations in there. And then I didn't really, do anything. Like I did the occasional pictures for like my sisters or traveling. I really loved photography for travel, and I really loved landscape.
I remember seeing your first portfolio was very heavily influenced with your travel work.
Yes. Yep. And that was kind of where I think like I was always interested in like the street photography scene. And that came from traveling. But I think like, when I really committed to photography was very recent. Like I opened up my LLC in 2019.
Okay.
And that was kind of when I was like, you know what, let's just start doing this. Yeah. And I had done like portraits and like started doing like families and engagements before then. And then my cousin was actually like, hey, I'm getting married in Denver. Could you photograph it?
Cool.
And I had my Canon full frame, and I was like, okay, yep.
Why did you have that camera? Was it?
So I actually bought that when in 2018 when I started taking the documentary photography classes
cool.
at U of M because I decided I wanted to step it up and I
Mhm.
really wanted to break into photography. And so I got it used and like, yeah, it immediately like my work evolved.
You don't need a full frame camera to do this business, but
Mm-mm.
man, I love my little crop sensor
Mm-hmm.
Fuji X100F, but there's just something about those full frame images that they just
Mm-hmm.
sing a little differently. I would
Yep.
imagine it's the same. I mean, I've shot medium format on film a handful of times. I have a couple of them. I don't really use them enough, but I imagine it's that same like jump from 35 millimeter film to medium format or like to large format
Mm-hmm.
where you're like, oh, it's just nice.
Yeah, it's just so much. It's just pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had.
I like you checked yourself there because I feel
Mhm.
like you were about to say better because it's not
Yeah,
necessarily
I
better.
I was going to say better. In my case, it was better because I had the camera that I was shooting on wasn't an interchangeable lens,
Hmm.
so I really wanted something that like could just give me more aperture and I could switch the lenses.
Yeah.
And so that to me was just like, when I was looking at crop sensors, I just decided to jump in and spend a little bit more money and get a used full frame. Are we stopping?
And we're back
We're back.
live streaming, friends.
So I guess just jumping in back to like working. So, yeah, I think kind of a combination made me jump into photography full time though. Like I wanted to own my own business and I
Hmm.
wanted to do this. I thought it was years off. Um, really COVID and pregnancy combined
Yeah.
made me like literally just jump into photography full time. Like I was under the impression that I was going to go get a graphic design job and work
Interesting.
on photography on the side until I could really have my own business, like until it was profitable enough to just do full time.
For sure.
And
But you always
then
saw the graphic design as a means to getting to photography?
yes.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Because I guess I wanted to be a photographer, but I wanted to freelance or like own my own business really.
Right.
I didn't want to be a photographer for like I mean living in northern Michigan, there's not really a ton of like magazine
Right.
opportunities
Right.
and stuff, but
Or like big production studios.
yeah, exactly. So that wasn't really an option. But then I thought that I would actually go work at Interlochen Arts Academy. And because I actually was going to interview there when I was still at U of M, and then I got an email saying that they weren't hiring because of COVID.
Oh no.
And then literally like I applied to a few graphic design companies, and it was like again COVID and pregnancy like happened all at the same time, and so it was just like I remember my husband was like, "How about you just jump into photography full time?" And I was like, I don't know if I'm like ready for that.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Just do it." Like, I'd done then a few weddings that I actually felt confident enough to be like, oh, I have a portfolio now. Like I can actually like show some of my work. So I kind of jumped into it like full speed, I guess, maybe before I was ready. So like things that I wish I had learned earlier were like creating a workflow because again with like
it's big, right?
again going back to like what we were talking about when you're so flattered when people want you, that it was just like I didn't really have packages set up. I didn't really have like any sort of like routine. It
the
was
process.
Yeah.
Your art process did not translate to a business process.
Exactly.
And they're very different.
Mm-hmm.
They overlap in a lot of ways, like location, time of day, or as we call it, daytime location, right? All of that is the arts process, but it's also a business process. And I mean, we're definitely going to start. We're going to at some point we're going to talk about workflow and process on either on live or on recording. But if you don't have something dialed in and someone wants to work with you, it's flattering, but you're not necessarily going to be able to offer them anything.
And that's kind of what I was experiencing. Like when, and it would be like a friend or a friend of a friend or someone that, I would be like, oh, how'd you hear about me? And, I would probably just throw out a number that was not knowing my worth. And it was just like, oh, okay, I don't have a package to send you. Like, I'm literally typing this out on my computer. Like, how about this much? And just such
Could
a mess.
I have a little bit of money, please?
Yeah, exactly. But this was now like a while ago where like, that sounds embarrassing and like cringe worthy that it makes me like, I wish I'd known this starting out. Like, how much could I have improved just by having a workflow?
But this whole industry is so cryptic, right? Like, they're short of a group there are, we're not the only one, but sort of a group like Photo Club where you have people sharing processes and prices. It's also hidden. I remember when the first big commercial gig that I got, I panicked and I was so worried that I was gonna like underbid that I almost lost the job. I ended up getting it, and it had, at least an extra zero on the end of it than I was originally expecting, and they didn't bulk at all. But because nobody ever spoke to me about like how to bid on commercial work. I mean, in this region specifically, but in a lot of smaller areas, there isn't that. I mean, we're not New York City, right? We're not in LA. You don't often hear a client asking, and how much is that to use it next year? So what is the image rights costing me per month to use these images? Nobody's asking that. More importantly, nobody's telling that. Nobody's explaining to Sarah Schade getting started, crawling out of the academia, the warm blanket that is academia, going like, hey, let me show you how you're gonna make a living with this. Academia should show you that.
They do not.
They did not. Maybe that is the answer. Maybe the answer of this broad, like, should you go to art school is yes, if you want, but at the same time, please get some entrepreneurship or business classes in there as well. If I, could have known what a cost of doing business was early on, I still don't do it very often, but if I could have known some like these tax words, I would have saved myself a lot of heartache early on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I probably when I say the timeline is messy, it's because I was doing jobs not consistently. And again, I was just like texting them, oh, how about $75? Like, I had no idea how much to charge or what to do or how to deliver photos. Like, and so when I say messy, it's like now I have a workflow pretty much dialed in. Like, there's always room for improvement. But I have like a delivery
10 years
system.
on, there's still room for improvement.
There always will be. But I actually have like packages to send to clients that I'm not embarrassed of. Like,
love it.
You know what I mean? It's not like I'm texting them, how about $75?
How much do you want to pay for this?
Like I'm actually like, have some like literature to send to people and have like a gallery system and everything. So
doesn't it feel good?
It does. Like,
feels so much better.
Again, I just feel confident. Like, if someone would say like, what's your website? I'd be like, it's this. Don't check it till I get home or something. Like, let me go fix
Sorry,
it.
I think we're having server issues. Let me double check on that.
Yeah.
Quickly Googles, how do I start a website?
Right. So now it's like, I feel very confident sending my website to people and like having a workflow, and that is so important. And so I think if I had known that going into it, or like, and not knowing all of that, like just having more of a system, like written down, like this is what you do. This is do it every time. Don't try it 1,000 different ways and see which one.
I don't know.
Kind of works.
This is the part of the show where eventually I'll plug in some sort of like, click here to buy the cohesive whatever like package of see my process for dollars amount. But to undercut that, especially since it doesn't exist yet, there is something really valuable about trying it 1,000 times and failing 999 times.
Yes.
That's I'm gonna say it's Edison. I don't know. I think we don't like him anymore. I think Edison's kind of a jerk. But
I don't know.
Oh no. Wait, who made the light bulb?
Yeah, that is Thomas Edison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like, someone asked him where, or if he was discouraged by failing so many times to make a light bulb, and he said, "No, I just learned 1,001 ways not to make a light bulb."
Yeah.
He might be a jerk. I think he's a jerk, right?
I'm not
Didn't he
sure.
like electrocute an elephant or something?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he was like really like cruel to animals, and
I didn't know
was
this.
just like a
that like breaks my heart.
Yeah, but
never gonna use a light bulb again.
Never. Well, the LED ones don't count. He didn't invent that.
Exactly. Going to candles.
Bringing it back. Going back to candles. Ooh, that would be a really fun shoot, though.
That would be.
We're getting sidetracked, but I'm so antsy to get back to photo walks. I have so many ideas like packed in the back of my head that are like, when it's safe, when it's safe. And now I'm like, I want to do a studio shoot where we just somehow acquire 1,000 candles.
Okay.
and then we'll photograph in just that. But
Yes.
that means there's a time limit because the
I
candles burn down.
I at least have 100 votives from our wedding that you can have, but they're
Whoa.
like really tiny, like tea lights.
So there's a timer.
Yes.
How long does a votive take to burn down?
I don't
I'm gonna
know.
guess like 15 minutes.
Yeah, there's probably something on the box, but
Probably. They're probably
Yeah.
like rated. This is a 15-minute votive.
yes.
So we'll have 15 minutes per shoot, and then it's a 45-minute reset
yes.
to
well,
take
we'd
them all
get
down.
all
Add.
new votives. Yeah.
Not a good
We
idea.
could do that.
Yeah, man, we had. I don't want to get like too in the weeds on what could have been, but we had so many great photo walks developed for what would have been season 3. I
Mhm.
think was during the COVID years, which we are not out of.
Yes,
We
we're
are
still in
the
them.
COVID years. Hearing you talk about 2019 and hearing you talk about starting your business and then COVID hit, it reminds me how long this has been going on.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, I think about that all the time. Literally, it was just like a crazy couple of weeks. Like, for me, like I literally found out I was pregnant, and then classes got canceled, and
Yeah.
we bought a house and moved here. Like, all in the span of like 2 weeks. And then it was
Wow.
me trying to graduate and get a job. And then it was just like, I've been doing photo part-time, just going in.
Doing photo full time.
Exactly. And it's funny because like I know that's crazy to start a business during COVID, but then I remember like you texting me once, like I think probably when I was freaking out about something,
Mhm.
and you being like, I started my business during the recession in
Yep.
2008. Like it will be something that makes you stronger.
Yeah. If you can
And-
build something now
Yeah.
that works when things are tough, it just means that you'll be resilient for when things are good.
Mhm.
It's not that we built Photo Club during this recession, during the lockdown, but we took it from a group that was intended to mainly be face to face, and this stuff completely came out of lockdown,
Mhm.
right? Like the initial calls or the quarantine calls, right?
Mhm.
I still have all the graphics from there, and I think that'll be really interesting when we're on episode, season 12, episode 50 or whatever. It'll be really interesting to see, to go back and do like the original
A
graphics
throwback.
and yeah,
A quarantine throwback.
quarantine throwback. Yeah, that's looking back on like how long it's been. That's the wrong way to phrase that, but there's value in deciding that you are just not going to let something like a pandemic or a lockdown or a recession or get you down. Like you decided to be a successful photographer, and yes, we also like swept in and like, hey, can you come shoot with us? But that bold move of like, I'm just gonna do it. It's not to say that everybody has the financial resources to do that, right? That is rude to assume that.
Yes.
But there is some level of like, I don't like that language. I'm not going to use that word, but there's some level of like determination of like, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the cat's out of the bag. I don't like that expression either. That sounds
Yeah.
like cruelty to animals.
It is.
How do I say this? The information is out there now. Being a photographer is not hard. It's difficult. Sorry, it's not difficult. It's hard. It's a lot of hard work, but anybody can do this. I was not a good artist when I was not the kid that was drawing. I don't sculpt well. I can't paint. I'm good at this because I've put in the hours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good at this because I wanted to be good at it. This is very revealing, but like when I didn't have any friends growing up and I wanted to have friends, I found a group of people that were like the dorky, artsy kids. And I so badly wanted to be funny like them. I wanted to be creative like them. I wanted to come up with stupid, weird ideas. They were always like carrying an old camcorder, right?
Oh yeah.
With tape.
Mm-hmm.
It was old then, and now they don't even work anymore. I
Yeah.
assume like it was somebody's dad's that they found in a garage,
Mm-hmm.
and just like shooting crappy home movies on them and calling them cinema. I wanted to be that, and so it wasn't that long ago. It was a few months ago. I was talking to some of those kids again and realizing, oh, I turned myself into that.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I would be the person to have like good ideas, good creative like project ideas. I have so many people get sick of hearing them now. And that's just because I decided I wanted to be that person. I decided I wanted to be a creative person, and I don't have it in my blood necessarily, but I decided to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes that kind of goes back to school. Like, I was one of those people that always loved drawing, and I loved like doodling, and just, I don't know, like I loved fashion, and I don't know, I just thought I had an eye and really appreciated art.
Mhm.
And then but I was under the impression that like the creative community was intimidating, and I needed to be taught how to be a part of that community.
Yeah.
But it was like, it really just takes years and confidence to get, to a point where your work, you're like, oh, I created that. Not like,
Yeah.
no, that's not mine. Let me hide. Like,
Oh man.
it's just, I don't know. You do have to put in the work, and I work on my business every day.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot of work.
The
and-
creative community is intimidating. Like it can feel that way.
Mhm.
I like to think that what we're building feels like it's peeling a little bit of that back. But I once described success as the ability to look back further and further at your own work and still not cringe at it.
Mhm.
So like when you're first getting started, you're like, that work 6 weeks ago, ugh,
Mhm.
please, I can do better now. And now I can look back at the past few years and be like, that's pretty good. Maybe I would do it a little bit differently now, but I can't say I would do it better now.
Yeah, just different.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think that's an important lesson to learn, especially if you're still in the throes of like discovering your voice or discovering like your passion for it. Like if you want to do something, but you're just not certain what that is. And I see that every day in the photo club community. I see people just being like, I know I love to do this, but I don't know exactly what it is yet.
Mhm.
I think that being able to look back at your work and not wanting to throw up is important.
It is, definitely. And I think just looking back at your work too, like, and I think learning from it, like, yeah, it's not cringeworthy, but again, it's just different.
Yeah.
Like, it could be, oh, I would have shot that at a different time of day or something like that.
Right.
But not cringeworthy.
But it also relates to being able to look back at your process, being able to look back at your web design. Like there's so many aspects of this business that go through that same sort of creative kind of polishing year over year over year over month over month. And if you want to cringe, go to do you know about the Wayback Machine on the internet?
I don't think so.
It's the Internet Archive.
Oh, okay.
And so it takes snapshots of websites every so often. I don't even think you need to have that many visitors every single month to get it. I've looked back at you can still see my first website. If you put alan-kentphotography.com into the Wayback Machine, you'll see my first website.
Okay.
It's there. Cringy is the word for it. And but if I look back a year or two at my website now, it's not that bad. It's different, but it's not that bad.
Yeah. And I think that's just, I don't know, us changing as people too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think
I love it.
Like everything, it's personal.
Like every single thing depends on your business model, depends on your style and your aesthetic. So dial that in and then figure it all out.
Yeah.
Every aspect of it.
Yes.
Every single aspect. Everything. That's pretty good.
Cool.
Is there anything else that we missed that we want to talk about?
I don't think so. I think we should probably wrap up because
I agree. It's been 1 hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's a long time to hear us talk.
I
don't know. Maybe we're that interesting.
We are so interesting. This is the point where like professional podcasters are like, is there anything you want to plug? Do you have any like shows on Broadway you're working on, or any movies that we should see?
No, but I'll give some resources for beginner
Ooh,
photographers
please
because
do.
I think that's always helpful.
Yeah. And we'll make sure that these get put into like the show notes.
Yes,
as well.
that's a good idea because I love podcasts that like sum up or have resources too.
Oh, I'm working on it.
Yes, I know you are.
Thank you.
Photo club and community, huge resource. Like ask people. People can be really nice and helpful. As far as like me talking about workflow, Google Drive is great. Like calendars, use a calendar.
For sure.
And when you're just starting out, like gallery websites, like I use PicTime, SmugBug, Pixie Set. There's a ton of them out there. Get on one of those early.
Agreed.
Because they're great. Like emailing photos, like I used to do, or texting photos even. Just get a gallery site. It's up to a certain amount of gigabytes, they're free.
Yep.
And
they get you hooked because they're awesome. And then it's not a big deal to upgrade because you're making money off of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So get a gallery delivery service or site, get a website, and I use Squarespace now, and it's really easy because I don't like coding or anything.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah. If anybody has any feedback on the podcast side of things, I am, all ears. We're putting a lot of work into making this. This is officially like the first of season 3. So season 0 was like the first 2, and then lockdown was season 2. Season 2. All right, Sarah, go see your baby.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. I'm gonna go here.